She was 7 months pregnant when the security guards dragged her out of the hospital in a wheelchair. Her husband stood at the end of the hallway, his hand resting on another woman's belly, watching her scream with absolutely no emotion in his eyes. "You have 48 hours to vacate my house," he said coldly. "My lawyers will be in touch about the baby." Clara Mitchell had given up everything for this man. Her career, her friends, her independence. She thought she was living a fairy tale in his glass mansion. She had no idea she was living in a prison. What Clara did not know was far more terrifying than what she did. Her husband had been drugging her prenatal vitamins for months. He never wanted a wife. He wanted a vessel to carry his heir. And once that baby was born, Clara was meant to disappear. But the doctor discovered something in Clara's blood that made her go pale. And what she told Clara next would expose a conspiracy so twisted, so calculating, that even the billionaire's own mother would turn against him. Promise. This is the story of how one woman lost everything, her money, her freedom, her newborn baby, and fought her way back from the edge of destruction. Stay with me until the end, because the final twist, you will never see it coming. Value statement. Before we begin, I want you to know something important. This story is not just entertainment. It carries a powerful message that every woman needs to hear. You are never as powerless as they want you to believe. There is always help. There is always hope. And your silence is not protecting you. It is protecting them. If this story helps even one person recognize the signs of manipulation or gives one woman the courage to walk away, then every word was worth telling. The security guards gripped Clara Mitchell's wheelchair handles like she was a criminal being escorted from the premises. Her hospital gown clung to her swollen belly, 7 months pregnant and trembling in the cold corridor air. Mascara streamed down her cheeks in dark rivers as she struggled against the restraints holding her wrists to the armrests. This could not be happening. Not here. Not like this. At the end of the hallway, her husband, Adrian Blackwood, stood with his hand resting possessively on another woman's stomach. Vanessa Harlow, his executive assistant, wore a satisfied smirk that made Clara's blood run cold. The diamond on Vanessa's finger caught the fluorescent light, sparkling with cruel mockery. Adrian's voice cut through the sterile air like a blade. "You have 48 hours to vacate my house. My lawyers will be in touch about the baby." Clara opened her mouth to scream, to protest, to beg, but the sound that emerged was something primal, a wounded animal's cry that echoed off the hospital walls and disappeared into nothing. The guards wheeled her toward the exit. 3 weeks earlier, Clara Mitchell had believed she was living a fairy tale. The Blackwood mansion rose from the Connecticut hillside like a crystal palace, all glass walls and modern angles that caught the morning sun and scattered rainbows across Italian marble floors. Clara stood in the nursery she had spent 3 months designing, running her fingers along the hand-painted mural of woodland creatures dancing beneath a smiling moon. "What do you think, little one?" She pressed both hands against her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement that never failed to fill her heart with wonder. "Your daddy picked out that rocking chair himself, the one by the window with the blue cushion." She did not mention that Adrian had ordered the chair online without consulting her, or that he had never actually sat in it. Some truths were easier to smooth over with hope. Her phone buzzed on the changing table. Denise Crawford's face filled the screen, her best friend's expression a mixture of concern and forced cheerfulness that had become familiar over the past few months. "Girl, let me see that nursery. I have been dying to see what $2 million of baby furniture looks like." Clara laughed and flipped the camera to show off the room, the crib imported from Stratton, the organic cotton, everything, the temperature controlled, everything else. It is a bit much, I know. A bit much, Clara? That diaper pail probably costs more than my car. Denise's tone shifted, the cheerfulness fading. But seriously, how are you? How is Adrian? Clara hesitated. The question seemed simple enough, but lately the answer had become complicated. He is busy. You know how it is with the new development project? He has been working late almost every night. Working late. Denise's voice flattened. Clara, I am happy for you. Truly I am. But something feels off. He bought you a $2 million nursery, but would not hold your hand at your own baby shower. He flew to Paris for a business meeting, but could not make your last ultrasound appointment. You are just jaded from your divorce. The words came out sharper than Clara intended, and she immediately regretted them. Denise had been through hell with her ex-husband, a man who had seemed perfect until the day he was not. Jaded keeps you alive. Denise's response carried no offense, only the hard-won wisdom of a woman who had learned difficult lessons. Listen to me, Clara. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. And I want you to do something for me, okay? Start a secret savings account. Every woman needs a freedom fund, even happy wives. Especially happy wives. Denise, that is ridiculous. Adrian would never. Promise me. Clara sighed. Fine, I promise. But she had no intention of keeping that promise. Her marriage was solid. Her husband loved her. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. She kept repeating those words as the sun set and Adrian's car finally pulled into the circular driveway. She had prepared his favorite dinner, filet mignon with roasted vegetables and the expensive wine he preferred. The table was set with candles and fresh flowers. Clara met him at the door, rising on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. The moment her lips touched his skin, Adrian flinched. He actually flinched, pulling back as if her touch had burned him. I am exhausted, Clara. He moved past her, without making eye contact, loosening his tie as he headed for the stairs. I will eat in my study. Do not wait up. She stood in the foyer, her hand still extended toward empty air, and tried to remember the last time her husband had voluntarily touched her. She could not. That night, Clara lay alone in their California king bed, listening to the house settle around her. Adrian had claimed the guest room 2 months ago, citing her restless pregnancy sleep as the reason. At first, she had accepted the explanation. Now, in the darkness, doubt crept in like poison. Her hand found her belly, feeling the baby kick against her palm. It is okay, little one, she whispered to the silence. Daddy is just stressed. Everything will be better. Once you are here, you will see. But even as she spoke the words, she could not make herself believe them. The charity gala arrived on a Saturday evening, one of those glittering events where the wealthy gathered to congratulate themselves on their generosity. Clara had squeezed into a designer maternity gown, determined to stand beside her husband and present the image of unity they had carefully cultivated. Adrian offered his arm as they entered, but his grip was mechanical, performative. His smile never reached his eyes. The Hartfords are here, he murmured through clenched teeth. I need to discuss the merger. Mingle. And then he was gone, leaving Clara alone in a sea of strangers who looked at her with expressions she could not quite decode. Pity? Amusement? Something darker? She made her way to the refreshment table, selecting a glass of sparkling water, and nearly collided with 2 women whose conversation died the moment they spotted her. Mrs. Blackwood, one of them said, recovering quickly. You look radiant. When are you due? 2 months. Clara forced a smile. I cannot wait to meet her. Her? A girl? How wonderful! The woman exchanged a glance with her companion. And Adrian must be so excited. Although, I suppose he has been rather busy lately. We hardly see him at the club anymore. The other woman smothered what sounded like a laugh behind her champagne glass. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. What do you mean? Oh, nothing at all. Just that a man in his position has so many demands on his time. The first woman's smile had too many teeth. You know how it is with these powerful men. There is always someone demanding their attention. She emphasized the word someone in a way that made Clara's stomach turn. Later, near the silent auction tables, Clara overheard fragments of whispered conversation that burrowed into her brain like parasites. Why does he never touch her? My husband could not keep his hands off me when I was pregnant. Have you seen his assistant lately? She is positively glowing. Clara's hand trembled against her belly. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her mother's distress. That night, after they returned to the mansion, Clara found courage she did not know she possessed. She followed Adrian into his study and closed the door behind her. We need to talk. Adrian did not look up from his laptop. It is late, Clara. Those women at the gala. They were saying things about you, about Vanessa. His fingers paused on the keyboard for just a fraction of a second. What things? That she is glowing, that you have been spending time with her, that... Clara's voice cracked. Adrian, are you having an affair? He closed his laptop slowly and turned to face her. His expression was not angry or defensive. It was something worse. It was annoyed. Clara, those women are vultures. They feed on gossip and misery. Vanessa is my employee. She manages my schedule, my correspondence, my professional life. That is all. Then why will you not touch me? Why do you sleep in another room? Why do you look at me like I am a burden? Adrian stood and approached her, but stopped just out of reach. You are being hormonal and paranoid. This is exactly why I need space. Your emotions are exhausting. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to come home every night to accusations and tears? Clara felt the words hit her like physical blows. I just want my husband back. I want you to be excited about our baby. I want Deeb. What you want, Adrian interrupted coldly, is a fantasy. I have given you everything, this house, this life, this child, and still you demand more. Perhaps the problem is not me, Clara. Perhaps the problem is that nothing will ever be enough for you. He brushed past her and left the study without another word. Clara stood alone in the dim light, one hand pressed against her belly, and wondered if he was right. Maybe she was being unreasonable. Maybe pregnancy hormones were clouding her judgment. Maybe she should be grateful for everything she had instead of questioning the one person who had given it to her. I am sorry, she whispered to the empty room, practicing an apology she would deliver tomorrow. She did not realize she was apologizing for her husband's sins, not her own. The waiting room of Dr. Rebecca Santos's obstetrics practice smelled like lavender and new beginnings. Clara sat alone in a padded chair, watching other couples flip through parenting magazines and discuss baby names with excited whispers. One expectant father was practicing swaddling techniques on a demonstration doll while his wife recorded him on her phone, both of them laughing at his fumbling attempts. Clara looked away. Adrian had claimed an emergency board meeting prevented him from attending today's appointment. It was the fourth appointment he had missed in a row. Clara Blackwood? The nurse led her through familiar corridors to an examination room where Dr. Santos waited with a warm smile. The doctor was in her mid-40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that Clara had grown to appreciate over the past 7 months. Flying solo again today? Dr. Santos asked, her tone carefully neutral. Adrian had a meeting. You know how it is. The doctor made a non-committal sound and gestured for Clara to lie back on the examination table. The ritual was familiar by now. Cold gel on the belly, the probe moving in slow circles, the whooshing heartbeat filling the room like music. "She sounds strong," Clara said, watching the grainy image on the monitor. "Very strong. Everything looks perfect." Dos Santos set down the probe and helped Clara sit up. "Now I want to check a few other things. Standard procedure at this stage." The examination continued with blood pressure checks and measurements. "Then, doctor." Santos paused, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly. "Clara, I noticed some bruising on your arms, here and here." She pointed to faint marks that Clara had almost forgotten about. "Oh, that." Clara forced a laugh. "I am so clumsy lately, bumping into everything." "These marks are not consistent with bumping into things." The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "They look more like fingerprints, like someone grabbed you with significant force." Clara's throat tightened. She remembered the argument 3 nights ago, when Adrian had seized her arm to prevent her from walking away. He had apologized immediately, blamed stress, promised it would never happen again. "It is nothing, really." Dr. Santos studied her for a long moment. "I would like to run some additional blood work, standard tests, plus a few extras, just to be thorough. Is something wrong with the baby?" "No. No, your baby is perfect. This is about you." The doctor's hand found Clara's and squeezed gently. "I care about all my patients, Clara. Both of them." The blood draw was quick, and Clara left the appointment feeling vaguely unsettled without understanding why. She drove home through autumn-colored streets, trying to convince herself that everything was fine. 3 days later, her phone rang while she was folding tiny pink onesies in the nursery. "Clara, this is Dr. Santos. I need you to come to my office immediately. Not the hospital, my private practice. Can you do that?" The urgency in the doctor's voice sent ice through Clara's veins. "Is it the baby? Is something wrong? Please, just come. And Clara, come alone." The drive took 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. Clara's mind raced through every possible scenario, each one worse than the last. Birth defects, genetic abnormalities, something she had done wrong. Dr. Santos was waiting in her office. The door closed, blinds drawn. She gestured for Clara to sit and took the chair across from her rather than retreating behind her desk. "What I am about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear," the doctor began, "but I need you to listen carefully. Your blood work revealed something unusual. You have elevated levels of a sedative compound in your system, specifically a benzodiazepine derivative that should not be there." Clara blinked. "I do not understand. I have not taken any sedatives." "I know. That is what concerns me." Dos Santos leaned forward. "This compound was not prescribed by me or any doctor I can find in your records. Someone has been drugging you, Clara, and at these levels, it could harm your baby." The room tilted. Clara gripped the armrests of her chair. "That is impossible. I only take my prenatal vitamins and—" She stopped. The prenatal vitamins Adrian personally prepared for her every morning. The little ritual she had found so touching, her successful husband taking time from his busy schedule to care for her health. "Clara, who prepares your vitamins?" "My husband." The words came out as barely a whisper. "Adrian gives them to me every day." Dos Santos's expression hardened. "I was afraid of that. Clara, I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. Someone you trust has been poisoning you. This could constitute assault, or worse. You need to contact the police." "No." Clara stood abruptly, her thoughts spinning. "No, there has to be an explanation. Adrian would never hurt me. Maybe it is the manufacturer. Maybe the vitamins are contaminated. I tested the compound specifically. This is not contamination. This is deliberate." Clara was already moving toward the door. "I need to talk to him. I need to understand." "Clara, wait." DeSantos caught her arm. If I am right about this, confronting him could put you in danger. Let me help you. Let me contact the authorities. I just need to talk to my husband. She fled the office before the doctor could stop her, her mind a hurricane of denial and terror. There had to be an explanation. Adrian loved her. Adrian would never hurt their baby. But even as she drove home, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered questions she did not want to answer. She never made it to that confrontation. Her phone rang as she pulled into the driveway. Adrian's voice was clipped and professional. Dr. Santos called me. She is concerned about your mental state. She said you became hysterical in her office, making wild accusations. Clara's blood froze. That is not what happened. I have already spoken with her supervisor at the hospital. Given your erratic behavior lately, I think it is best if we bring in additional support. I have hired a private nurse to stay with you until the baby arrives. Her name is Gloria. She will be there within the hour. Adrian, listen to me. She found something in my blood, something that should not be there. She found elevated stress hormones, Clara. Consistent with anxiety and paranoid thinking, I am worried about you. We all are. The line went dead. Clara sat in her car, staring at the mansion that no longer felt like home. Her husband had weaponized her concerns against her within hours. He had turned the one person who might have helped her into another tool of control. She was trapped. When Gloria arrived, she was a sturdy woman with kind eyes and an iron grip on Clara's daily schedule. She monitored Clara's meals. She controlled Clara's phone access. She reported to Adrian every evening with detailed accounts of Clara's behavior. For the baby's safety, Adrian explained when Clara protested, you are not yourself right now. Gloria is here to help. Clara learned quickly that resistance was futile. Gloria slept in the room adjoining the master bedroom. Gloria accompanied her on every outing. Gloria was always watching. On the fourth night of her captivity, Clara waited until Gloria's snoring penetrated the wall. Then she crept to the nursery, to the closet where she had hidden a prepaid phone purchased months ago at Denise's insistence. The Freedom Fund she had never started. But this phone, bought with cash on a whim, might save her life. Her fingers trembled as she dialed. Hello? Denise's voice was thick with sleep. It is me. I do not have much time. Clara? What is wrong? Why are you whispering? I need your help. Denise, I need you to get me out of here. The silence on the other end stretched for an eternity. Then Denise's voice returned, sharp and focused. Tell me everything. Denise Crawford had survived a marriage that nearly destroyed her. Her ex-husband had been charming, successful, and utterly ruthless in his manipulation. She recognized the signs in Clara's whispered story because she had lived them herself. Listen to me carefully, Denise said, her voice steady and commanding. I am coming to get you tomorrow. 2 in the afternoon. The back entrance, near the service road. Can you get there? Gloria watches me constantly. She reports everything to Adrian. Then we give her something to report. Tell her you are feeling better. Compliment her cooking. Ask her to help you organize the nursery closet. Be the perfect, compliant patient they want you to be. Make them think their plan is working. Clara closed her eyes, absorbing the instructions. And then what? At 1:45, tell Gloria you need to rest. Go to your room, lock the door, climb out the window, and run like hell to the back gate. I will be waiting. What if she checks on me? Then we improvise. But Clara, you need to do something else first. Something important. Denise's tone sharpened. Document everything. Screenshots, photos, recording. Your state has one-party consent, which means you can legally record any conversation you are part of. Store copies in the cloud, email them to yourself, Give copies to someone you trust. This evidence might be the only thing that saves you in court. Court? Honey, you are married to a billionaire who has been drugging you. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. You need ammunition. After the call ended, Clara lay awake until dawn, planning. The next morning, she executed Denise's strategy with precision. She smiled at Gloria over breakfast. She thanked Adrian for his concern when he called to check in. She played the role of a woman who had seen the error of her ways, and in between performances, she recorded. She captured Adrian's voice on a phone call, speaking words that made her stomach turn. The prenatal vitamins are working. She is too foggy to question anything. After the birth, we proceed with the plan. She photographed the vitamin bottles, the labels, the pills themselves. She documented every bruise on her arms, every restriction Gloria imposed, every detail of her gilded prison. At 1:30 in the afternoon, Clara announced she needed to rest. Gloria smiled approvingly and returned to her crossword puzzle. Clara climbed the stairs with measured steps, closed her bedroom door, turned the lock, and moved to the window. The drop to the garden below was further than she remembered, but her baby kicked hard, as if urging her forward, and Clara made her choice. She landed badly, pain shooting through her ankle, but she did not stop. She ran past the rose garden, past the fountain, toward the back gate where Denise's battered Honda waited like a beacon of hope. "Get in!" Denise threw open the passenger door. Clara collapsed into the seat, gasping, her hand pressed protectively against her belly. "Go! Please go!" The car lurched forward. Gravel sprang behind them as they fled down the service road. Clara watched the mansion shrink in the side mirror, waiting for alarms, for pursuit, for Adrian's security team to appear. Nothing. They had made it. "Oh my God!" Clara sagged against the headrest, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot believe that worked." "Believe it, honey. You are out." Denise reached over and squeezed her hand. "Now we need to get you somewhere safe. I have a friend who runs a domestic violence shelter 2 towns over. They have lawyers, counselors, everything you need." "Domestic violence shelter?" Clara's voice cracked. "Denise, I am not." "He never hit me. He drugged you. He imprisoned you. He manipulated doctors into declaring you unstable." Denise's jaw tightened. Financial abuse is abuse. Reproductive coercion is abuse. You do not need black eyes to qualify, Clara. What he did to you counts. The shelter was a converted Victorian house with cheerful yellow paint that belied its purpose. A woman named Maria welcomed Clara with hot tea and a room of her own. No questions asked, beyond the essential ones. "You are safe here," Maria promised. "No one knows this location. Take all the time you need." That night, Clara allowed herself to breathe. She called a number Denise had given her, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and spoke to a counselor who did not judge, did not question, simply listened and validated. "What you are describing is serious," the counselor said. "We can connect you with legal advocates who specialize in cases like yours. Would you like their information?" Clara wrote down every word. For 3 days, she existed in a bubble of safety. She met with lawyers who reviewed her evidence and nodded grimly at the recordings. She spoke with counselors who helped her understand the patterns she had been too close to see. She slept without fear for the first time in months. Then Gloria found the hidden phone. Clara had left it behind in her haste to escape, forgotten in the nursery closet. Gloria discovered it while searching the room and delivered it directly to Adrian. The consequences came swiftly. Clara's phone buzzed with a text message from her husband. No anger, no accusations, just cold, clinical destruction. Check your bank accounts. She logged into her financial apps and watched her world collapse. Joint accounts, frozen, personal savings, emptied, credit cards, canceled. The money she had been secretly setting aside, following Denise's advice, had vanished. Adrian had always had access as her husband, and he had used it to erase her financial existence. A second message arrived. Your car has been reported stolen. The police are looking for it. I would suggest abandoning it immediately. Clara stared at the screen, her hands shaking. The car was in his name. Of course it was. Everything was in his name. She had signed documents he had placed in front of her, trusting him, believing him when he said it was simpler to consolidate their assets. She had signed away her own freedom. The third message was the kill shot. I have informed the authorities that my mentally unstable wife has kidnapped herself and our unborn child. When they find you, and they will find you, you will be placed under psychiatric observation for your own protection. Think carefully about your next move, Clara. Denise found her hyperventilating in her room an hour later. We need a plan B. Come on, honey. You are not giving up. I have nothing. Clara's voice was hollow. No money, no car, no credibility. He has turned me into a crazy pregnant woman who ran away from the help she needed. You have evidence. Those recordings, those photographs, they tell the real story. Evidence that I cannot pay a lawyer to present. Evidence that he will bury under a mountain of his own narrative. Clara pressed her palms against her eyes. Denise, I have lost. No. Denise knelt in front of her, forcing Clara to meet her gaze. You have lost a battle. The war is just beginning, and I know someone who might be willing to fight it with you. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Harrison? It is Denise. I have someone you need to meet. Yes, it is that kind of case. Can you come to the shelter tonight? Harrison Webb arrived at the shelter after dark, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much injustice to be surprised by any of it. He carried a leather briefcase, worn soft by years of use, and a reputation as one of the finest divorce attorneys in the state. He also carried a personal stake that Denise had not mentioned. My daughter married a man like your husband, Harrison said, after reviewing Clara's evidence. They sat in the shelter's small conference room, documents spread across the table like a battlefield map. Successful, charming, controlling. He destroyed her in court, claimed she was mentally ill, fabricated evidence, turned her own family against her. She lost custody of her children for 3 years before we got them back. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. How did you win? Patience, documentation, and finding the cracks in his armor that he did not know existed. Harrison tapped the recording on Clara's phone. This is good. His voice, his words, clear evidence of drugging, but we need more. We need to understand his motivation. His motivation is control. He wants to control me. That is part of it. But men like Adrian Blackwood do not do anything without a larger purpose. There is something else driving this, something he is protecting or pursuing. Harrison closed his briefcase. I am taking your case pro bono. Not charity, a personal investment. I want to see men like him fall. Over the next week, Harrison's team dug into Adrian Blackwood's life with surgical precision. They requested financial records, interviewed former employees, traced the origins of his fortune. What they found changed everything. The Blackwood Family Trust, Harrison explained during their next meeting. It was established by Adrian's grandfather, a real estate magnate who wanted to ensure his fortune stayed in the family line. The trust is worth approximately $400 million, but there is a condition. Clara leaned forward. What condition? Adrian can only access the full trust when he produces an heir, a biological child. Until then, He receives a modest allowance and management fees, but the bulk of the fortune remains locked. The implications settled over Clara like a cold fog. He does not want me. He wants my baby. It gets worse. Harrison slid a document across the table. We obtained medical records through a confidential source. Vanessa Harlow, Adrian's assistant, is infertile. A childhood illness damaged her reproductive system beyond repair. Clara stared at the paper, unable to process what she was reading. Then her pregnancy is impossible. She is not pregnant, Clara. She is wearing padding and performing a role. Harrison's expression hardened. Adrian needed a vessel for his heir, someone trusting, someone controllable, someone he could discard once she had served her purpose. He found you. The word vessel echoed in Clara's mind, stripping away any lingering doubt about her husband's feelings. She had never been a wife to him. She had been an incubator. There is more, Harrison continued. We analyzed the compounds found in your blood. The sedative was only part of it. There was another substance, one that in high doses can induce premature labor. Clara's hand flew to her belly. He was trying to make me deliver early? Early delivery would justify emergency intervention. He could claim you were too unstable to care for a premature infant, gain immediate custody, and have you committed before you could fight back. Harrison's voice was tight with controlled fury. This was never about your marriage, Clara. It was a planned extraction of his heir. The room fell silent. Clara sat with her hands pressed against her unborn daughter, feeling the kicks and movements that reminded her she was not alone. What do we do now? She finally asked. We build an airtight case. The medical evidence, the financial manipulation, the fraudulent pregnancy. We gather character witnesses, employment records, anything that establishes a pattern of behavior. Harrison stood and began packing his briefcase. And we do something Adrian is not expecting. We find an ally inside his own family. His mother, Margaret Blackwood, has her own history with men like her son. Her husband, Adrian's father, was notorious for his cruelty. She endured decades of humiliation before his death. Harrison moved toward the door. I have reached out through mutual contacts. She has agreed to meet with you. The meeting took place at a quiet cafe in a neighboring town. Margaret Blackwood was smaller than Clara had imagined, a delicate woman in her 70s with perfectly styled white hair and eyes that held depths of hidden pain. I know what my son is, Margaret said without preamble. I watched his father turn him into this. I watched myself fail to stop it. She reached across the table and took Clara's hands. I will not fail you the way I failed myself. Why would you help me? He is your son. Because he is exactly like his father. And his father nearly destroyed me. Margaret's grip tightened. I have access to financial records Adrian does not know exist. Hidden accounts, offshore transfers, evidence of fraud that would interest federal prosecutors. I also have a lake house in Vermont that is solely in my name. You can stay there while Harrison builds your case. Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. Thank you. I do not know why you would do this for a stranger. You are not a stranger. You are a woman carrying my granddaughter. And unlike my son, I know that some things matter more than money. The lake house was a sanctuary of pine walls and stone fireplaces, far from Adrian's reach. Clara spent her days resting, preparing, and connecting with Dr. Santos, who had risked her career to become a witness. I should have acted sooner, the doctor said during a video call. When he called me, threatening the hospital's funding if I did not cooperate, I should have seen through him immediately. Instead, I hesitated. You are helping now. That is what matters. I will testify to everything. The drugging, the threats, all of it. Your husband believed he could buy silence, but he miscalculated. The pieces were coming together. Harrison filed motions. Witnesses prepared their statements. Clara's custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks away. For the first time since her nightmare began, hope flickered in Clara's chest. She should have known better. The invitation arrived at the lake house through a courier service, an elegant cream envelope with gold embossing that announced the Blackwood baby celebration. Clara stared at the card with rising dread. "He is throwing a baby shower," she said to Denise, who had driven up for the weekend. "A shower for a baby he claims belongs to someone else. He is baiting you. Ignore it." But ignoring Adrian Blackwood was not easy when his reach extended into every corner of Clara's life. The next morning, she discovered that her credit had been restored, her bank accounts unfrozen, a message attached from Adrian's lawyers. "Mr. Blackwood extends an olive branch. He believes the separation has been a misunderstanding. He invites you to attend the celebration as a gesture of reconciliation." "It is a trap," Harrison warned when she called him. "Obviously, but what if I walked into it anyway?" Clara's mind was racing. What if I showed up, documented everything, recorded whatever he is planning? "Clara, that is extremely risky. He has the home advantage. He also thinks I am weak and broken. He thinks I will hide in Vermont until he crushes me in court." Clara straightened her spine. "I am tired of hiding. I want to face him." Against Harrison's advice, Clara drove to Connecticut for the celebration. She wore a simple maternity dress, her evidence phone hidden in her bra, and what remained of her courage wrapped around her like armor. The Blackwood mansion blazed with light. 200 guests filled the grand ballroom, glittering with diamonds and dripping with wealth. Clara slipped through a side entrance, her heart pounding. She found a corner and observed. Adrian worked the room with practiced charm, accepting congratulations on his impending fatherhood. Vanessa stood beside him in a flowing gown that accentuated her fake pregnancy bump, playing the role of doting partner. Clara was photographing them when she felt eyes on her. She turned. Margaret Blackwood stood across the room, her expression unreadable. She gave Clara a tiny nod, then looked toward the main stage, where a microphone waited. Adrian was heading toward it. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice carrying through the sound system. "Tonight is a celebration of new beginnings. But before we continue, I have a confession to make." The room fell silent. "Some of you may know that I was previously married. My wife Clara was a wonderful woman, but sadly, she struggled with mental health issues that made our relationship impossible." Adrian's tone dripped with rehearsed sorrow. "I had hoped to help her, but some people cannot be helped." Clara felt her blood turn to ice. "What many of you do not know is that Clara is pregnant. I believed the child was mine, and I tried to support her through her instability. But recent tests have revealed the truth." Adrian paused for effect. "The child she carries is not my biological offspring." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Meanwhile, Vanessa here has been my rock, my partner, my true love, and I am thrilled to announce that she is carrying my legitimate heir." Adrian gestured, and Vanessa stepped forward to stand beside him, her hand on her padded belly, her smile a triumph of cruelty. "I share this not to humiliate my estranged wife, but to be honest with all of you, my friends and family. The truth matters. And the truth is that Clara Mitchell has no claim on me, my fortune, or my legacy." The applause that followed was polite but confused. Clara stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then Vanessa spotted her. "Oh my God." Vanessa's voice cut through the murmurs, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She is here! Security! The crazy woman is here!" Heads turned, eyes found Clara. She saw fear, disgust, pity. Vanessa strode toward her, and everything happened so fast. "Stay away from my man, you pathetic gold digger." The slap connected with Clara's cheek, the impact snapping her head to the side. She stumbled, her pregnant body off balance, and crashed against a table. Champagne glasses shattered. Someone screamed. Clara lay on the ground, her face throbbing, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly. Above her, Vanessa stood with righteous fury, and Adrian watched with cold satisfaction. "Remove her," Adrian commanded. Security guards appeared. They lifted Clara roughly, ignoring her protests, ignoring the guests who seemed uncertain about what they were witnessing. Clara was escorted through the mansion and deposited outside the front doors like garbage. The night air was cold. Her cheek was swelling. Her dress was stained with champagne and humiliation. She sat on the stone steps, shaking, as the sounds of celebration continued inside. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I recorded everything. Meet me at the garden gate in 5 minutes. M." Margaret, Clara, forced herself upright and limped toward the meeting point. Margaret was waiting in the shadows, wrapped in a dark coat, her face drawn with anger. "I have video of Vanessa assaulting you. Clear, undeniable video." She pressed a small device into Clara's hand. "I also have something else." While everyone was distracted, I accessed Adrian's study. "There are documents there, Clara. Financial fraud on a massive scale. He has been stealing from his own company, his own mother, for years." "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because my son deserves to fall, and because that baby you carry is innocent." Margaret gripped Clara's arm with surprising strength. "Take this evidence to your lawyer. Bring Adrian down. Do what I was never brave enough to do." Clara drove back to Vermont with shaking hands and a determination that had hardened into steel. The humiliation, the assault, the lies, they were not defeats. They were fuel. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. Clara woke at dawn, reviewed her testimony one final time, and dressed in a conservative navy dress that Harrison had helped her select. "You look like a mother," he said approvingly. "Trustworthy, sympathetic, exactly what we want." Denise drove her to the courthouse, where Harrison waited with the team of associates who had spent weeks preparing their case. Dr. Santos was there. Margaret Blackwood was there. Character witnesses from Clara's teaching career lined the hallway. "We have everything," Harrison assured her. "The medical evidence, the financial fraud, the assault video. Adrian has nothing that can counter this." Clara wanted to believe him. She tried to believe him. But something felt wrong, a prickling at the back of her neck, an instinct honed by months of living with a predator. They entered the courtroom. Adrian sat at the opposing table with a battalion of expensive lawyers, looking unruffled, almost bored. He caught Clara's eye and smiled. That smile haunted her through the opening statements. Harrison presented their case with precision and passion. He played the recordings of Adrian discussing the drugging plan. He showed the medical evidence. He brought Dr. Santos to the stand, where she testified about the compounds found in Clara's blood. Adrian's lawyers cross-examined without making a dent. The judge's expression grew increasingly troubled as the truth emerged. By lunch, Clara allowed herself to hope. "We are winning," Harrison said, over sandwiches in a conference room. His lawyers are floundering. The judge is clearly sympathetic. But when court resumed, Adrian's lead attorney rose with a new motion. "Your Honor, we have just received evidence that requires immediate attention. Evidence that Mrs. Blackwood poses a danger to herself and her unborn child." Clara's stomach dropped. The attorney presented documents, medical records, from a psychiatric facility in Arizona, dated 10 years earlier, describing a young woman named Clara Mitchell who had been hospitalized for severe depression and suicidal ideation. These records were sealed, the attorney explained, but given the gravity of this custody case, we petitioned for their release. They clearly demonstrate that Mrs. Blackwood has a history of mental illness that makes her unfit to parent. Harrison jumped to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. These records, if authentic, are irrelevant to current proceedings. Mental health treatment from a decade ago does not indicate present danger. The records are authentic, Adrian's lawyer countered smoothly, and they establish a pattern combined with Dr. Santos's own initial concerns about Mrs. Blackwood's mental state. We have compelling evidence that this woman should not have custody of a vulnerable infant. Clara grabbed Harrison's arm. I was hospitalized after my parents died. I was 22 years old and grieving. It was 1 month of treatment, and I have been fine ever since. I know, Harrison whispered back, but the damage is done. The judge has seen it. The hearing continued, but the momentum had shifted. Every piece of evidence Clara presented was now filtered through the lens of her psychiatric history. The recordings could be explained as paranoid delusions. The medical findings could be attributed to self-harm. The assault video showed only Vanessa defending herself against an unstable woman who had crashed a private event. By the end of the day, the judge announced a recess to consider the evidence. We will reconvene in 72 hours, she declared. I encourage both parties to consider the best interests of the child. Clara left the courthouse in a daze. Harrison's optimism had faded to grim determination. We can still win this. The psychiatric records are old. We can bring in experts to testify about your current mental state. Will that be enough? Harrison did not answer. That night, Clara felt the first contraction. It came as a tightening across her abdomen, not the Braxton Hicks she had experienced before, but something sharper, more urgent. She was alone in the lake house, Denise having returned home to care for Tyler. She called Dr. Santos. How far apart are the contractions? Every 15 minutes, maybe less. That is too soon. You are only at 34 weeks. Dr. Santos's voice carried carefully controlled concern. I want you to go to the hospital immediately. Call an ambulance if you need to. Clara called 911. The ambulance arrived within 20 minutes, and she was loaded onto a stretcher while EMTs monitored her vitals. BP is elevated. Contractions are intensifying. We need to move. The ambulance raced through dark roads toward the nearest hospital. Clara clutched her belly, speaking to her baby. Hold on, little one. Just hold on. But when they arrived at the emergency entrance, a familiar face was waiting. Adrian Blackwood stood in the hospital lobby with a team of lawyers and a court order. My wife is mentally unstable and poses a danger to our child, he announced to the medical staff. I have emergency custody authorization. She is to be placed under psychiatric observation immediately upon delivery. Clara screamed. She fought. The EMTs held her down while nurses administered sedatives. You cannot do this, she cried. He is lying. Someone call my lawyer. Call Harrison Webb. But the hospital was one of the largest recipients of Blackwood Foundation donations. The staff knew which side their funding came from. Clara was wheeled into a delivery room alone. The contractions intensified. Medical staff surrounded her, but none of them met her eyes. Hours blurred together in a haze of pain and drugs. Clara pushed when they told her to push. She screamed when the pain overwhelmed her. She begged for someone, anyone, to help her. At 3:17 in the morning, her daughter was born. Clara caught one glimpse of the baby, a tiny red face with perfect features, before a nurse whisked her away. Wait, Clara sobbed, reaching toward the empty air. Let me hold her. Please let me hold my baby. The father has requested immediate custody. a voice said. The child will be well cared for. They wheeled Clara to a different wing of the hospital, a locked ward with bars on the windows. She was assigned a room with a camera in the corner and a guard outside her door. When she woke, her baby was gone. The psychiatric ward smelled like industrial cleaner and institutional cooking. Clara lay in a narrow bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the hours since she had last held her daughter. 48 hours. 48 hours since that one glimpse of a perfect face before they took her away. She had tried everything, demanded to see a lawyer, demanded her rights, demanded an independent psychiatric evaluation. The staff smiled politely and adjusted her medication. You need to rest, Mrs. Blackwood. The doctor will see you soon. The doctor never came. On the third day, a different nurse entered her room, younger, with nervous eyes, that darted toward the camera in the corner. Mrs. Blackwood? Her voice was barely a whisper. There is someone here to see you, but you did not hear this from me. She led Clara through back corridors to a storage room where Denise was waiting. The two women embraced, and Clara broke. He took her, she sobbed into Denise's shoulder. My baby. He took my baby, and he left me here to rot. I know. Denise held her tight. I know, honey. But listen to me. Harrison has been working around the clock. That court order Adrian used, it was issued by a judge who receives annual gifts from the Blackwood Foundation. We are filing for an emergency review. Dr. Santos is testifying again. Margaret is turning over every document she has. It is not enough. Clara pulled back, her face ravaged by despair. Denise, he has all the power, all the money, all the connections. I am locked in a psychiatric ward that he funds. I am fighting a war with nothing. You have the truth. The truth does not matter. It never mattered. Clara sank onto a box of medical supplies, her body curled around the emptiness where her baby had been. I have lost everything. My daughter, my freedom, my life. He wins. He always wins. Denise crouched in front of her, gripping Clara's hands with fierce intensity. You have not lost me. And you have not lost the truth. They can lock you in a room, Clara, but they cannot erase what happened. Harrison is already filing emergency appeals. The psychiatric hold has strict legal limits. You have rights, the right to an independent evaluation, the right to legal representation during any hearing. Demand both. In writing, they have to comply. How do you know that? Because I lived it. Denise's voice carried the weight of experience. My ex tried the same playbook, claimed I was unstable, had me committed for observation. But there are rules, Clara. There are limits to what they can do, even with all their money. You just have to be smart enough to use them. Clara wiped her eyes, a spark of something igniting in her chest. Not hope exactly, something fiercer, something that refused to die. Tell me what to do. Denise outlined the plan. Clara would formally demand an independent psychiatric evaluation, citing her legal rights. She would refuse to sign any documents without legal counsel present. She would document everything that happened in the facility, every medication, every restriction, every staff member who followed Adrian's orders over proper procedure. And I will be on the outside, making noise, Denise promised. The press loves a story about a billionaire stealing a baby from her mother. I have already contacted 3 journalists who are very interested in Adrian Blackwood's history. After Denise left through the same back corridors, Clara lay in her bed and planned. The next morning, she requested a meeting with the facility director. She arrived with a written demand for an independent psychiatric evaluation, citing specific legal statutes that Denise had researched. The director's smile was condescending. Mrs. Blackwood, I understand you are distressed, but these matters are best left to professionals. These matters are governed by law. Clara kept her voice steady. You can comply with my legal rights, or you can explain to a judge why you did not. The smile faltered. 3 days later, an independent psychiatrist arrived. Dr. Nathan Moore was a gray-haired man with no connection to the Blackwood Foundation and a reputation for thorough, unbiased evaluations. He spent 4 hours with Clara. He reviewed her medical history, her current medications, her behavior during the hold. He asked about her marriage, her pregnancy, her experiences over the past months. When he finished, his expression was troubled. Mrs. Blackwood, I find no evidence of mental illness requiring involuntary commitment. Your psychiatric history from a decade ago shows appropriate treatment for grief. Your current behavior is entirely consistent with a woman who has experienced significant trauma. He closed his notebook. I will be recommending your immediate release. Clara wept with relief. She walked out of the psychiatric facility 72 hours later, thinner and paler, but unbroken. Denise waited in the parking lot with Harrison Webb, who looked exhausted but triumphant. We have an emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning, Harrison said. Different judge, different court, no Blackwood connections. And Clara, we have something else. He handed her a tablet displaying a news article. The headline read, Billionaire accused of financial fraud, patient abuse, and explosive court documents. The press found your story interesting, Harrison continued. Very interesting. Adrian's lawyers are scrambling. His hospital donors are distancing themselves. His business partners are demanding explanations. Clara scrolled through the article, seeing her own story reflected back at her. The drugging, the imprisonment, the stolen baby, all of it laid bare for the world to see. Where is my daughter? With Adrian, but Clara, with this level of public scrutiny, he cannot hide. We will get her back. For the first time in weeks, Clara allowed herself to believe. The emergency hearing took place in a federal courtroom downtown, far from Adrian Blackwood's sphere of influence. Clara sat beside Harrison, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching as their case unfolded. Dr. Santos testified first, presenting her medical findings with clinical precision. The compounds found in Mrs. Blackwood's blood were administered without her knowledge or consent. The concentration levels were consistent with deliberate, repeated dosing over a period of weeks. In my medical opinion, this constitutes poisoning. Adrian's lawyers objected. The judge overruled them. Margaret Blackwood took the stand next, frail but determined. My son is exactly like his father, she began, her voice quavering but clear. I watched Gerald Blackwood destroy women for 40 years. I watched him manipulate, control, and discard anyone who threatened his power. And I watched him teach our son to do the same. She produced documents, financial records showing Adrian had embezzled millions from family accounts, communications proving he had planned Clara's imprisonment months before executing it, evidence that Vanessa Harlow had been paid $500,000 to participate in the fraud. I failed to stop my husband, Margaret concluded. I will not fail to stop my son. The courtroom buzzed with murmured reactions. Adrian's legal team scrambled to object, to redirect, to minimize. But the most devastating testimony was yet to come. Harrison approached the bench with a flash drive. Your Honor, we have obtained video evidence that we believe is critical to these proceedings. The video played on courtroom monitors. It showed the Blackwood baby celebration from multiple angles, captured by Margaret's hidden camera. The audience watched Adrian announce Clara's alleged infidelity. They watched Vanessa assault Clara. They watched security remove a pregnant woman from her own home while her husband smiled. But the most damning moment came from footage captured inside Adrian's study, recorded by a device Margaret had planted weeks earlier. Adrian and Vanessa, alone, speaking candidly. "The psychiatric hold is perfect," Adrian said on screen. "By the time she gets out, if she gets out, the baby will be bonded to us. Any judge will see it is in the child's best interest to remain in a stable home." "And if she fights?" Vanessa asked. "She has nothing to fight with. No money, no credibility, no support. I have made sure of that." Adrian's smile was cold. Clara was always a means to an end. The trust requires an heir. She provided one. Now she is disposable. The recording continued, revealing the full scope of Adrian's plan. The sedatives to keep Clara compliant. The premature labor compounds to force early delivery. The psychiatric manipulation to remove her from her child's life. Vanessa's final question sealed their fate. What about the fake pregnancy? When do I take off this stupid padding? After the custody hearing, we will announce a tragic miscarriage. By then, Clara's baby will legally be mine, and no one will question it. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. Adrian Blackwood sat rigid at the defense table, his composure finally cracked. His lawyers had gone pale. Vanessa, seated in the gallery, was already being approached by federal marshals. The judge spoke into the silence. "I have seen enough. Mr. Blackwood, you are remanded into federal custody pending investigation of multiple charges, including fraud, assault, and conspiracy. Emergency custody of the minor child is immediately transferred to Mrs. Clara Blackwood. Bailiffs, take him." Clara watched as her husband was led away in handcuffs. He did not look at her. He did not say a word. Vanessa was escorted out through a different door, her fake pregnancy bump visible beneath her designer dress, her face a mask of terror. When the courtroom emptied, Clara sat alone at the plaintiff's table, unable to move. Harrison touched her shoulder. "It is over, Clara. You won. Where is my daughter, Chambeau?" "Child Protective Services is bringing her now. She will be here within the hour." Clara pressed her hands to her face and wept, not from sorrow this time, from relief so profound it felt like drowning in reverse. 53 minutes later, a social worker entered the courtroom carrying a small bundle wrapped in pink. Clara stood on trembling legs. She crossed the room toward her daughter, with steps that felt both eternal and instantaneous. The social worker placed the baby in her arms. Clara looked down at her daughter's face, seeing her for the first time since those chaotic moments in the delivery room. The baby had her eyes. The baby had her chin. The baby was perfect. "Hello, little one," Clara whispered, tears streaming freely. "I promised I would come back for you. I promised you would never feel unloved." The baby made a small sound, almost a sigh, and settled against Clara's chest. For the first time in months, Clara felt whole. 1 year later, Clara stood at the podium of a domestic violence awareness conference, facing an audience of 500 people who had come to hear her story. She had changed since those dark days. Her hair was longer. Her smile came easier. The shadows under her eyes had faded, replaced by the healthy glow of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. "I was a woman with no job, no money, and a husband who controlled everything," Clara began, her voice steady. "I thought I was trapped. I thought his power was absolute. I thought I had no choices." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the audience. "I was wrong." The speech continued, weaving together the threads of her experience with practical wisdom that had been hard-won. You are never as powerless as they want you to believe. There is always help. There is always hope. The first step is knowing you deserve better, because you do. She spoke about recognizing the signs of financial abuse, about documenting everything, about the resources available to women who felt alone. The National Domestic Violence Hotline helped me when I had nowhere else to turn. That number is 1-800-799-7233. Memorize it. Share it. You never know who might need it. The audience applauded. Women approached Clara afterward with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories, thanking her for speaking truth. Denise watched from the back of the room, Tyler fidgeting beside her. "Mom, is that the lady who made the mean man go to jail?" "Yes, baby, that is her. She looks happy now. She is happy now." Denise smiled. It took a while, but she found her way back. Later, at Clara's modest but cheerful apartment, the three women gathered with Harrison Webb for a celebration dinner. Clara's daughter, named Hope, dozed in a portable crib nearby, blissfully unaware of the darkness she had been born into. Federal prosecutors accepted Vanessa's cooperation agreement, Harrison reported over pasta. She provided everything: recordings, emails, financial records. Adrian is facing charges that will keep him in prison for decades. Good. Denise raised her wine glass. To Karma. She works slow, but she tips well. Clara laughed. It was a sound she had rediscovered over the past year, returning gradually, like spring flowers after a long winter. "How is the teaching job?" Harrison asked. "Wonderful. Third graders are demanding, but they remind me every day that the world is bigger than my problems." Clara glanced toward Hope's crib, and they adore her. I brought her to class once for show and tell, and 28 children nearly lost their minds. Margaret Blackwood sent monthly letters from her new home in Europe, where she had relocated to escape the scandal surrounding her family name. She asked about Hope constantly, requesting photos, offering financial support that Clara politely declined. "I want to build my own life," Claire had written back, "but I want Hope to know her grandmother. When she is older, maybe we will visit." One afternoon, Claire received an unexpected visitor. Marcus Chen, the principal of her elementary school, stopped by her classroom after hours with a coffee and an awkward smile. "I noticed you have been grading papers through lunch again," he said. "I thought you could use some fuel." Clara accepted the coffee with surprised gratitude. "Thank you. That is very thoughtful. Also, I wanted to ask you something." Marcus shifted his weight, clearly nervous. "There's a new Italian restaurant downtown. I have been meaning to try it, but I hate eating alone. Would you maybe want to go sometime, as friends, or not friends, whatever you are comfortable with?" Clara studied him. He was kind, earnest, completely unlike the polished predator she had married. His hands were calloused from weekend carpentry projects. His smile reached his eyes. "I would like that," she said. The first date led to a second, then a third. Marcus was patient with her hesitations, understanding when she needed space, present when she needed support. He adored Hope and never tried to replace the father she would never know. By summer, Clara realized she was happy. Not the manufactured happiness of her marriage to Adrian, built on appearances and control. This was something real, something earned, something that could withstand storms. One evening, as she sat on her small balcony watching the sunset while Hope played with blocks at her feet, Clara reflected on how far she had come. She had lost everything once: her money, her home, her freedom, her child, and she had rebuilt, piece by piece, relationship by relationship, day by day. She had discovered strength she never knew she possessed and accepted help she had once been too proud to seek. The phone rang. Harrison's name appeared on the screen. "Clara, I have news. I thought you should hear it from me." His tone made her stomach tighten. "What happened?" "Adrian is dead. They found him in his cell this morning. The official report says suicide, but there are questions." Clara absorbed the words without feeling anything at first. The man who had tried to destroy her was gone. Questions? Vanessa's testimony implicated people more powerful than Adrian, business partners with their own secrets to protect. There are theories that someone wanted to prevent him from talking. Does it matter how it happened? Probably not. What matters is that it is over. Truly over. Clara ended the call and sat in silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to black. She thought about Adrian Blackwood, the man she had loved, the monster he had become, the child who would never know him. She felt no grief, no satisfaction, only a strange emptiness, like a wound that had finally closed. Hope tugged at her pant leg, demanding attention, and Clara lifted her daughter onto her lap. "You will never know him," she whispered into Hope's soft hair, "and that is the greatest gift I can give you." 2 years after the trial, Clara Mitchell stood in the kitchen of the house she had purchased with money earned from her teaching salary and the best-selling memoir she had written about her experience. It was not a mansion, it was not glass walls and Italian marble. It was a 3-bedroom craftsman with a garden in the back and a swing set where Hope spent her afternoons. It was home. "Mama, look!" Hope burst through the back door, clutching a fistful of dandelions. "I got you flowers!" Clara crouched to accept the gift with appropriate reverence. "These are beautiful, baby girl. Should we put them in water?" They arranged the dandelions in a mason jar together, Hope's small fingers fumbling with stems while Clara guided her gently. These were the moments Clara had fought for. The ordinary magic of motherhood that Adrian had tried to steal. The doorbell rang. Denise and Tyler arrived for their weekly dinner. Tyler, now 10 years old and proudly carrying a homemade apple pie. "I helped with the crust," he announced. "Mom said I did not burn it as much as last time." High praise indeed. Clara ushered them inside. Marcus arrived shortly after, still in his work clothes, bearing wine and apologizes for running late. He kissed Clara's cheek and swung Hope onto his hip in one practiced motion. "How is my favorite future teacher?" "Good." Hope wrapped her arms around his neck. "I taught Teddy his colors today. He got yellow wrong, but I did not get mad." "Very patient of you." The evening unfolded with laughter and storytelling. Tyler regaled them with tales of fifth-grade drama, while Hope listened with wide eyes to this sophisticated older child. Denise and Clara exchanged knowing glances over glasses of wine, communicating in the silent language of women who had survived similar wars. After dinner, while Marcus helped Tyler with dishes and Denise supervised Hope's bath time, Clara stepped onto the back porch to watch the stars emerge. She thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago, the woman who had believed her husband's lies, the woman who had apologized for his cruelty, the woman who had almost lost everything. That woman felt like a stranger now. The back door opened. Marcus joined her on the porch, sliding an arm around her waist. "You are thinking deep thoughts," he observed, "just remembering. Good memories or bad ones?" Clara considered the question. "Both. But mostly I am thinking about how different everything is now. How different I am. You are pretty extraordinary. I did not feel extraordinary when it was happening. I felt small and scared and alone." She leaned into his warmth. "I think that is the biggest lie we tell ourselves, that people who overcome terrible things are somehow special. We are not special. We are just people who refuse to give up." Marcus pressed a kiss to her temple. "Sounds pretty special to me." Later, after the guests had left and Hope was asleep, Clara sat at her desk to write. The memoir had been difficult to produce, requiring her to relive experiences she would rather forget. But readers had responded with an intensity that surprised her. Women wrote from across the country, sharing their own stories, thanking her for making them feel less alone. She was working on a follow-up now, a practical guide for women navigating financial abuse and custody battles. Harrison Webb had contributed a chapter on legal strategies. Dr. Santos had written about medical red flags. Margaret Blackwood, from her villa in Tuscany, had provided a foreword about recognizing manipulation in those we love. Clara typed her final chapter heading, "What I Wish I Had Known." The words flowed easily. I wish I had known that asking for help is not weakness. I wish I had known that trusting my instincts was more important than trusting my husband. I wish I had known that my value did not depend on his validation. I wish I had known that the end of one story is always the beginning of another. She saved the document and closed her laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build the life she had chosen rather than the life she had been given. But tonight, Clara Mitchell climbed the stairs to her daughter's room and watched Hope sleep. The nightlight cast soft shadows across the peaceful face of a child who would never know fear. "I kept my promise," Clara whispered. "You will always be loved." She touched Hope's cheek gently, then crossed to the window where the first light of dawn was beginning to paint the horizon. A new day, a new beginning, a future written by her own hand. Clara smiled and went to meet it. Now, if you are new here, welcome to our channel. We create stories that move you, stories that stay with you, long after they end. If you enjoy content with meaning, stories that make you feel something real, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a new story. And when you hear a moment that hits you right in the heart, drop a comment below. Tell me which part gave you chills. I read every single one. Share this video with a friend who needs to hear it. Sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything. Now, let us begin. Closing disclaimer. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually crafted by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. We believe that powerful storytelling can inspire change, spark important conversations, and remind us all that we are stronger than we know. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.